Get for help! Burn her ass up!
What's up? Dog. First dog I've seen. that motherfucking water?
That's quick.
I think it was equipment.
Was that tank of furs? Right one down there still intact.
Could be the end of the battle of the Basra. I did not see this was I remember the old one.
Bring that Vulcan up. They blew up that one in the ammo.
Blew up the ammo. The first one was ammo.
That was the other one.
Damn. They're gonna blow another one.
Where at? 2 feet above.
It's you can't see it from where you're at.
side of the road. See that fucking thing up there, the house? The ticket booth right ahead of us? Uh-huh. That's yours, okay?
Okay.
Got it. Bound again. Optic, bound forward.
Surrender, Butter!
Just move to the left.
That's it, Surrender! Okay.
Okay, that's where we are, too. You got another one? Okay, wait one. Hey! Hey, nobody fucking keep that one for us.
Hey, don't touch that K-pot. Don't touch it.
We have an enemy Kevlar by our position right now. Romeo 48. Free stroke, sir.
Say again?
He says free stroke.
They clear? All right.
Building's clear, sir. talking to somebody.
Let's get behind this building.
I'm at
Go back
boots
this
now.
way.
Either they shave or they just cut their wrist.
Right to left.
Okay, sir. Do you introduce yourself with the full?
Yeah, I'm Major General Barry McCaffrey, Commanding General of the 24th Infantry Division Mechanized, the Victory Division, stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Okay, sir. Could you tell me what objectives were under your control?
Yeah, the 26th Division had the mission of attacking during the initial phase some 220 kilometers into the Euphrates River Valley. Our objectives were objectives gold and orange, which was to sever the lines of communication between Baghdad and the 500,000 troops in the Kuwaiti theater of operations.
Okay, sir. Tell me how you went about taking those objectives.
Yeah, the division was organized as a 26,000 soldier force. It had additional engineer group, an additional artillery brigade, an additional logistics brigade-sized element, and our objective was to attack with a cavalry squadron in the lead, followed by 2 brigades with 1 brigade in trail. We seized our intermediate objectives, destroying a lot of engineer forces. We caught them totally by surprise. They had no concept at all that we would come in that place. They were totally surprised, or that we could come that far. So when we got out into the Euphrates River Valley, our initial opposition was from an airborne brigade that we attacked into their rear. They fought for some 4 or 5 hours. They were totally overwhelmed by the artillery and the Apaches and the tank fire and Bradley fire, and finally they surrendered. From then on, we attacked to the east and west to overrun 2 of the major Iraqi air bases. To the east to Jalabah airfield, and to the west to Talil airfield. We destroyed a tremendous number of aircraft on the ground. At Jalabah, there were some 10 MiGs, high-performance aircraft, and 8 helicopters. And then over on Talil, there were 4 MiGs and 1 helicopter. We overran a lot of armor, which put up very ineffectual short-term fights. And then we overran some logistics centers that had literally thousands of revetted positions. So it was a tremendous concentration of their food and ammunition and supplies for the Kuwaiti theater of operation.
All right, sir. Can you tell me about the EPWs that were taken under what circumstances?
Yeah, we captured some 6,000 enemy prisoners of war during the campaign to date. Thousands and thousands more are still wandering around in this general area. Initially, some of them we had to let go because of the pace of our advance. We just disarm them, give them a meal, and move on. The pattern, 1 airborne brigade fought with limited effectiveness. There were 1 or 2 tank units that fought. We did sustain several hundred rounds of enemy artillery fire, most of it very poorly directed without a good command and control system. But in general, I would tell you that we engaged enemy forces with a sudden volume of fire, and they tended to give up after that. So I'd characterize the majority of them as looking for an opportunity to surrender.
Okay, sir. What kind of enemy equipment did you capture?
Well, tremendous amounts. It's almost impossible to catalog it. We overran the general positions of some 5 enemy divisions during this campaign. Most of their equipment they left in place, and we either destroyed it in combat or destroyed it with engineered demolitions after they'd abandoned it. Our final action, we attacked east to right up the approaches to Basra. We ended up some 30 kilometers to the west of Basra. And in this location here yesterday, the remnants of the Hammurabi Division attempted to escape to the west possibly because of poor reconnaissance. They bumped into us. Although the ceasefire was in effect, they did engage us with T-72 tanks, with Stagger missiles, with RPGs. We then engaged them with 5 battalions of artillery, attacked them with Apaches, with Cobras and air cavalry units, and then counterattacked with a mech tank brigade and destroyed the better part of the Hammurabi Division. Hundreds and hundreds of trucks, just under a couple of hundred armored vehicles. It was simply one of the most magnificent sights I've ever seen. For 25 kilometers by 20 kilometers, as far as the eye could see, there was columns of black smoke and flame going up from the destroyed enemy armor. Frog missile launchers, T-72 tanks, BRDMs, brand new BIMP Soviet armored fighting vehicles. Quite a sight.
Which units saw the most action on where we're looking?
Yeah, all 3 brigades, ground brigades of the division, the 197th, the 1st, and the 2nd, participated fully in the action, as did the 2nd Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment. I had a tremendous amount of artillery. Initially, I had 7.5 battalions of artillery. By the end of the campaign, in addition to the 4 battalions, 3.5 battalions of the division force, the 3 battalions of the 212th FA, 3 additional battalions of the 18th Field Artillery Brigade, and then finally 3 more battalions of the 196th Field Artillery. So again, I would underline that the biggest hammer we had was the artillery combined with the Apache helicopter. And we fired enormous volumes of artillery fire, which crushed their will to resist. In fact, I would suggest that perhaps for the first time in history, one of the divisions that we faced the final night before the ceasefire took place, we fired a preparatory engagement from about midnight until 4 o'clock in the morning. That division left its defensive positions and started to stream off and retreat to the southeast. We were about 60 kilometers west of Basra at the time, having been defeated primarily by artillery fires and Apaches at night.
Were any allies helping out at all?
We had some, we operated essentially as part of the 18th Airborne Corps battle team. So the success of the division was predicated upon the French Daguet Division, a tremendously powerful and professional force, seizing an intermediate objective White in conjunction with the 82nd Airborne Division. So yes, indeed, the 24th Division could not have succeeded without the French on the left and the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne seizing their objectives, which allowed us to continue the attack and allowed our some 900 trucks worth of fuel and supplies to get through to us on the 2nd day of the campaign.
Okay, sir. How many casualties did your division take, if any?
Yeah. Thank God the miracle of this operation was the low loss of friendly forces. We had 6 of our soldiers killed, 14 wounded, and 19 non-battle injuries, accidents, injuries during the attack. To be honest, I cannot believe the good fortune that this entailed. Now, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. We were an armored division with the best equipment in the world, mechanized division. We had tremendous supporting fires from the artillery, from the Apaches, and from the Air Force. But finally, I credit much of it to the American soldier. These are just the best young men and women we've ever had in uniform. Aggressive, well-trained, and they went out there and overwhelmed these people on the first few hours of the war, and they never recovered.
What kind of air support did you have from the Air Force or other?
Yeah, well, we had very closely integrated supporting attacks by the Air Force before we crossed the LD. We had AC-130 and A-10 support to strip away their reconnaissance and surveillance capability before we crossed the frontier. That allowed us to mass this 26,000-man division and to prepare during some 2 weeks without being discovered by the Iraqi intelligence and reconnaissance services. Then when we started the attack, we had the Air Force go in and hit all of the targets in our zone. So our intermediate objectives, brown and gray and red, were all attacked by the Air Force, enemy artillery units, and then our final objectives in gold and orange in the Euphrates River Valley were very heavily struck by B-52s, by F-16s, and by A-10. So it was a tremendous preparatory bombardment that absolutely terrorized this enemy force before we got in there.
Well, what kind of tactics did you use to hit the enemy's tanks, and did the bombs that they put help any at all?
Yeah, the enemy tanks were all destroyed by Bradley TOWs and 120 millimeter tank guns of the M1A1. It ranges out to some engagements at around 2,500 meters for the M1A1 tank, and we had some tow engagements in excess of 3,000 meters. We also destroyed a tremendous amount of their equipment with the Apaches firing Hellfires. We fired some 400 Hellfire missiles during the course of the campaign and devastated. The T-72 tanks we destroyed during the fighting at the Ramallah refinery, oil refinery. It was the better part of a division minus that was crushed in 6 hours of fighting. The tanks were destroyed with catastrophic explosions. Absolutely incredible. I saw one T-72 destroyed in which it literally disappeared as a vehicle, leaving a giant crater in the road. Many of the T-72s, when hit with the M1A1 tank gun, the turret would explode and fly off the vehicle as far as 50 to 150 feet. So they didn't stand up very well. Now, the other thing is we destroyed many tanks in revetments. Jalabah Airfield, we knocked out 18 tanks, the majority of them either with Apaches firing Hellfire or M1A1 tanks, and the berm won't even slow down the 120 millimeter tank gun that ranges out to 1,500 meters. It goes right through the berm and knocks the tank out.
Well, okay, tell me about the enemy, kind of elaborate on how the enemy aircraft were destroyed at the airfields.
Yeah, well, it was a beautiful sight when the 2nd Brigade attacked east along the Euphrates Valley to Jalabah. They did so with several battalions of artillery in support, Apaches in support, but when they actually hit the airfield, they attacked down it with 315 Infantry, a tank mech task force, attacked right down the runway with 4 companies of tanks and Bradleys online. But we covered the entire airfield, and they attacked from west to east, and as they did, they shot up everything in sight. Tremendous panic. Most of the air defense we had knocked out before we started the attack with artillery and Apaches. And then we came upon these aircraft were parked. They had done a tremendous job of dispersing aircraft and trucks as far out as 5 kilometers from the airfield. The trucks parked 500 meters apart on a grid system. All the ammunition, or much of the ammunition, dispersed, and the aircraft were parked considerable distances from the main runways. So beautiful MiG-29s with their twin engines. They all got set on fire by 25 millimeter Bradley cannon fire and burned right where they were.
Okay, sir, how are your feelings on having that? And if you had anything that you would have done differently, how would you have done it?
Well, we had a tremendous plan. The Sync General Schwarzkopf put together a plan that allowed us to use our speed and our firepower and deception and surprise and violence and simplicity and not oppose the main enemy force. That's the first thing we had going for us was the plan. Then we had a combined arms team. This thing could not have been done. There was no one piece of it that could have produced such dramatic results. And then finally, we had just an enormously aggressive execution of the fight. We ran into the only determined opposition that I saw was an airborne brigade as we first reached the Euphrates River Valley, and there we had 4 battalions up there fighting, and they were shooting away, and there were hundreds of burning trucks all across the horizon. The infantry were attacking out of their bunkers behind the tanks. And a big fight started off to my left, 200, 300, 400 meters out. Bunkers blowing up, 50 caliber machine guns firing. And I said, my God, who is that? Is that the 197th Infantry Brigade? And they said, no, sir. It's the combat trains, the logistics, the personnel people of 464 Armor and an attached engineer company attacking in the dark to clear this bunker complex. It was the supporting elements. They got out there and did it with night vision goggles, small arms, hand grenades, and in the dark. That was the supporting element. So my judgment is, how are you going to deal with a force that has that amount of decentralization of aggressive spirit in all the soldiers? I've had a lot of faith in the United States Army as an institution, tremendous belief in our own abilities when we started this. I knew we'd win. I knew we'd win fairly quickly. I had no idea that we could knock over 500,000 troops of the Iraqi Army with such ease. I think they never had a chance from the time we started. We rolled these people.
Is there anything like saying closing?
No, it was a magnificent tribute to 15 years of reconstructing the Army and the Air Force to put together this team effort.